No, I start because it's your episode.
Oh, that's right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 110 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Gavin, that is Mike, and I'm starting off this episode because, as you might have guessed from the title, this is a Mike Takes the Wheel episode. Mike Takes the Wheel Volume 10, if I'm not mistaken.
This is the 10th one I've done?
I believe so.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited, especially because beforehand, Mike told me, I have no idea what the topic is, as per usual.
You never do, yeah.
With Mike episodes, yeah. But he told me it was going to be one that I'm going to particularly enjoy, so I'm very excited. So do you want to give us...
Mike Takes the Wheel, hold on, before we even do that, when was the last time you rode a bike?
Oh, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I guess, let me say, like an actual bike?
Yeah, like a bicycle.
Okay, because I've been to the gym and been on a bike there.
No, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Yeah, then it's been a really long time.
Yeah, I hadn't ridden one since I was a freshman in high school, I think, until like 3 days ago. And I just bought a bike. And I'm going to tell you what, it's fantastic.
See, I've been meaning to, because I live close enough to my university that, like, especially if it's, not snowy, then, like, it's probably like maybe a 5-minute bike ride. And it's just way more convenient than like trying to find parking.
Exactly. Like I'm going to start biking to work at some point. Like I'm excited now that I get to be like a bike person. What I just need that one. I get a helmet. I don't have a helmet yet.
Yeah. No, especially around Syracuse. Yeah, you're
gonna want a helmet.
Oh, you're gonna want like a full body pad protection.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but
if you can drive in Syracuse, you can drive anywhere on the planet.
That's a firm belief on that one right there. So I got no real reason for bringing that up other than it was going to be my question to you if I was starting off this episode. So I wasn't just going to let that one go to waste.
Oh, okay. Well, no, it was a good question.
Yeah. So now that
I guess, do you want to give us a very brief intro to the topic before we get into some of our housekeeping things for this episode?
No.
Okay.
But I will, if for anyone that's, like really tempted, that hasn't looked at the title of this episode yet, Wolf is my, is my one little hint there. Wolf.
Okay.
All right, you're up.
Yeah, so we have lots of housekeeping things. First, we'll start with our typical spiel of do not forget to rate the show on whatever platform you listen to us on, and make sure to follow us on our various social medias, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc., to give us any kind of feedback about the show that you might feel strongly about, whether it's good or bad, as well as to suggest any future topics you'd like to hear us talk about on the show. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show in the future, make sure to fill out our guest form down below in the show notes. Next episode, we're going to be talking about what was supposed to be episode 109, which was cephalopods. We talked about them briefly. They are the group of mollusks that make up the octopus, squids, cuttlefish, and nautilus of the ones today, but they have a very long fossil history that is really, really, really cool. And obviously there's lots to talk about, even with just the living groups, particularly in the last couple of years with all the stuff about like how intelligent octopus are. So there's lots of discussion to be had there. But we'll cross that bridge next episode.
Noted.
All right, so a couple of our other various housekeeping things here. So you might have noticed it is just Mike and I today. A couple days ago, Fia reached out to me and basically was like, hey, man, grad school's tough. Grad school's a hard time.
Can confirm.
Yeah, same. And so she's going to be taking an indefinite break to work on her research. She'll be back, whenever she can. But, we made it clear that, like, this is not a work thing. Don't feel bad when you have to miss it, Yeah,
we're not getting paid for this.
Exactly. And so, but she did share the good news that she has officially committed to a PhD program in Florida to be starting in the fall, I believe. So super excited for her about that. She's moving from one swamp to an other, more different swamp, working on some other stuff. So really excited for the cool stuff she's got going on, and she'll be back whenever she is able.
And Fia's obviously missed on the podcast, but she's doing her own thing, and we'll whenever she's available again, she is more than welcome to share about all her experiences in grad school and whatever else she has learned during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. couple other things. So this housekeeping section is going to be abnormally long for us because there's been a number of developments just in random podcast adjacent things. So hopefully you all will never notice this next thing, but the platform that we use to record our podcast has changed its model. It used to just have like a free thing where you just make an account and it will like keep your recordings for I think 30 days. And you can just record however much you wanted on it. If you wanted to do a 4-hour podcast twice a week, it would do that. They're no longer supporting that for reasons that I understand. Server space is very expensive. But they are limiting each free account to 2 hours per month, which technically we could get away with since most of our episodes tend to be around an hour. But, to be cautious, we're probably going to be switching platforms. Hopefully, like I said, you all will not notice. But if there is some kind of weird editing hitch or something in the next handful of episodes, that might be why. There was an option on the site, though, to remain free, but this service would put ads on our episodes, ads that we would not control. I believe we would still get the revenue from it, but we would not control which ads. And I mentioned that to Mike, and he immediately was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, no, I would like to avoid ads if possible, but I mean, if we're going to do ads, I would like it to be something that we can control and, have some say in.
Right. Or like particularly something that might be somehow relevant to the general theme of the show. Not just, I feel like this is not a podcast that would promote like Athletic Greens or some of the other thing that like every other podcast has as a sponsor. Not really our vibe. Squarespace, yeah. For my own website that I have, I use WordPress. Fun fact. So really? I don't even use Squarespace. So, yeah. So, like I said, hopefully you all will never notice, but just in case you do, there's that. But in some more positive news, just between last episode and this episode, we passed 10,000 all-time listens and downloads for the podcast.
Did we really?
We did.
No kidding.
Yeah. That number, I've been, keep an eye on it, whenever I upload episodes or every now and then I'll just check the analytics. And that number's been creeping up and up and up. And then just this, when I took a look at it today, we just passed 10,000 all-time listens. So thank you all for that. That makes me feel real good.
Absolutely. I did not think that we were even close to that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And something else that, so the platform that we sort of upload the podcast to is owned by Spotify. And they've done some like rebranding recently where it used to be called Anchor.fm. I think they were independent, but then had been bought by Spotify at some point.
Of course.
So now it's called Spotify for podcasts, I guess. But they've actually added a handful of new tools, specifically being able to see the number of followers the podcast has only on Spotify, not any of the other Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever. But we have 139 just on Spotify, which also is more than I would have thought. So all of y'all listen to us on Spotify. Just know we appreciate you.
Awesome. Yeah, that I have nothing to add on that other than more people listen than I would have thought, which is still not that many people, but thank you to everybody that that is listening to us and has listened to us for one episode or for many. Yeah,
absolutely. And then just as a last quick thing before we get into the meat of the episode, at the time you're listening to this, yesterday was my birthday. So funnily enough, both my wife and also my sister got me various merch things with the podcast logo on it.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, and I'm sure one of them got the idea from the other. I believe Liz got the idea from my sister. So I have 2 t-shirts, a mug, and a little notebook with the podcast logo on it. So shout out to both of you, my wonderful wife and sister. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Right. And it's like, while we don't condone just taking our podcast logo and putting it on a shirt.
I think officially we have to say that, but I'm not going to go looking for anyone.
Right. It's sort of like NFTs, how they're just fancy JPEGs. Something similar like vibe. There's nothing to stop you from right-click saving. Right-click save as. Nothing stopping you from doing that, but Maybe if you do, at least tweet us a picture of it.
I would appreciate that very much so.
Yeah. Cool. So all of that various housekeeping out of the way, Mike, woof woof, I guess.
Woof indeed. Are we ready to get going?
We sure are.
All right. So what I told Gavin in the beginning when we were recording was I told him that I was going to just say the name of the person we're talking about today. And I sort of half expected him to just kind of like pick up the ball and run with it. And Gavin still has no idea.
I have a guess.
You have a guess? So again, with the only hint being Wolf, Gavin, would you like to take a guess as to who we are talking about today?
The only thing that comes to my mind... Okay, I have two, actually. The first one was Pavlov's dogs.
Okay.
Which, if anybody's not familiar, is some kind of like behavioral, like sort of almost like psychology adjacent analysis of like dinging a bell and dogs getting treats or something to that effect. But I don't think that's it. The other one that just came to mind was something to do with Balto and the Iditarod.
Those are your two official guesses?
Those are my two official guesses, yes.
Okay. Both wrong.
Okay.
We're not doing Pavlov, and we're not doing... I've never even heard of the other one here.
You should look it up. It is a very famous, at least famous in my elementary school, because each like elementary school classroom. So for the Iditarod is a sled dog race in Alaska,
right?
That is done every year. That originally was sort of like a sled dog relay race to get some really important medicine to this like super remote village one like winter back in like the 1930s or something. Where it's like everybody in this town had like some kind of like really bad infection that would have been cured by just some basic medicine, even by like 1930s standards, basic medicine.
Which
but
is
because it's
something.
Right. So because it's just a remote little village in Alaska in the winter, they had to do like across the entire state of Alaska, which is like half of the continental United States. And so they in like commemoration of this event, they run that race every year as a commemorative thing. Now it's like a competition to race across the entire state.
Right now, it's like for fun and for competition.
Right. Anywho, that's not important today. That was a very long tangent. Anyway, Mike, what is the actual topic then?
Well, I'll give you one final opportunity to guess. I had no idea what we were going to be learning about today until I was teaching my class today, and we were talking about the Cold War in my class there. At least that was part of what we were talking about. Does the idea of wolf and the Cold War? Do you have any other guess?
Are we talking about Cosmo?
We're not Cosmo. I don't know who Cosmo is.
Is it the dog that got sent up by the Russians?
We are going to be talking about Laika, the dog, the first space dog.
Okay.
Yes.
I was confusing. Okay. Showing my nerd side for a minute. Cosmo is the name of the Russian space dog from Marvel Comics.
That is incredible. So what do you know about Laika?
If I'm not mistaken, Laika was the first. I think some lizards were sent up into space before this, but it was the first, like, I guess mammal would probably be the most accurate way to put it, but just first mammal to be brought up into space and then returned. Actually, I don't know if the lizards ever came back, but I think Laika did.
So here is the story of Laika, the first what I would consider official space dog. She was one of the first. I'm taking this partly from Wikipedia as well as from a Smithsonian article that's very good. She was one of the first animals in space and the first animal ever to orbit the Earth.
Okay.
I believe the first animals that come up. Or that went into space were some fruit flies that NASA had sent up in like the 1940s or so. But Laika was a stray dog kind of wandering the streets of the Soviet Union in Moscow. And it was kind of chosen by the Russian space agency at the time, or the Soviet space agency, to have some stray dogs because they were used to living in some horrible conditions, extreme heat, extreme colds. Just you could treat them poorly, and they were kind of used to it. And
Mm-hmm.
so there is functionally no information I've been able to find on where Laika was from when she was born. It's a circa 1954 is when it says on her Wikipedia article, but there's no information on really anything, even really like how she was found or captured or whatever the case may be.
Right.
There was but there was a couple of dogs that were kind of procured for this. And what had happened was Nikita Khrushchev wanted to have a big celebration of the 40-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution.
Okay.
Now, the Soviets had already, were the first country to actually send a satellite into space. That was Sputnik 1. So they'd already gotten the start with the space race. And this is something that I'm sure that you know, Gavin, but many people might not, is
Mm-hmm.
that, we always talk about how the Americans won the space race. Not really. Like at every step of the way, the Soviets had beat the United States into space. The first satellite into space, the first dog into space, the first man into space, the first woman into space, like just all of it.
Yep.
But they never got to the moon. And as a result, we as Americans moved those goalposts right to the moon and declared mission accomplished.
Right, yeah.
Which is, is something we all want to do. But they had already kind of won that space race. And for the 40-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, Khrushchev wanted to have, something else that would, even top sending the first satellite into space. And so basically the idea was, with very little notice, Russian cosmonauts were told to put together a system to send a dog into space. And there was many different dogs proposed. They went through different training exercises of being put into very small quarters for days and then weeks at a time. They had some sort of apparatus attached where they would basically, their waste would be collected from this, which apparently the dogs absolutely hated.
Oh, I'm sure. In what way is that good? Like, even if you know and like can consciously be like, yeah, this is something that has to happen. That's still not pleasant. But like when you're a dog,
it's gotta be
God,
awful.
that's gotta be horrible.
Especially because as part of this, they were, put into very cramped quarters, could not move, could not turn around. And this was done for, a rather long time, these tests. And eventually, Laika was the dog that was landed on. There was another dog that was, that was kind of a backup dog. But Laika was the one that was chosen. And so basically she was, kind of a docile dog. She was, she was easy to work with by most accounts. And so 3 days before the start of the mission, she was placed into a capsule. At that time, temperatures at the launch site were low, and so they kind of heated it up with a nearby heater. And before, one of the technicians in preparing the capsule before final liftoff said the following: "After placing Laika in the container and closing the hatch, we kissed her nose and wished her bon voyage, knowing she would not survive the flight." This has been described in a bunch of articles that I've read in preparation for this as a suicide mission for the dog.
Right,
and,
yeah.
like, I'm not exactly, the world's biggest animal rights activist or anything, but suicide mission seems like the wrong way to think about this.
Right.
Yeah, like, based on what I
it's
know
one
about suicide.
thing. Right. It's one thing if the dog had control over this situation in any way.
Yeah, exactly. But Laika didn't. Russian cosmonauts knew that Laika would not survive this flight. The technology had not advanced yet to be able to return a living being back down to Earth. There had been conflicting reports for a while about exactly how Laika died. She was expected to die after about 7 days at most of oxygen deprivation. There had been reports of her food being poisoned, so she was only going to make it a couple of orbits around the Earth, and then she would die from poisoning. As of right now, as best as I can tell,
poisoned by what? Like just radiation?
Food.
Or
poisoned by food. So they were going to send her up with food, like 1 or 2 meals, and then just the food would be poisoned, and Laika, would die from the food as opposed to anything else.
Oh,
Um,
like poisoned on purpose,
yes,
or
yeah,
just the
poisoned on
food would go
purpose.
bad? Or okay,
Yep, poisoned on purpose is what it was. Different explanations have been given over the years. I believe the one that the official explanation now at this point is that Laika died from heat exhaustion. It had just gotten too hot, about 90 degrees in there, and after just a couple of orbits, it's expected that Laika died. Um, and there was different reports given about how long she died. There was even some reports saying that maybe Laika could be saved, but that was just not a thing that was possible nor expected. And so for 5 months, Sputnik 2, which was the capsule that went up there, went just rotated the Earth with Laika's corpse, until eventually returning to Earth and disintegrating upon orbit, as well as Laika's remains. That is kind of the sad story about Laika. The couple of things since then. Number one, Laika's become kind of a pop culture touchstone, with different stamps and
yep.
songs, and I believe she may have been the impetus for that Marvel dog that you were mentioning before, or at least something.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes, Laika inspired the creation of the Marvel character Cosmo the Space Dog,
Yep.
which is
Who will be in the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie coming out in like two weeks.
Oh, that's fantastic! I had no idea that was that was going to be a thing. So Laika inspired that. It was an opportunity for humanity to just see that it was possible to survive in space. There was sensors attached to Laika. She got to space and orbited the Earth, and you could see her heart rate. Her heart rate was very rapidly beating. Her breathing had, I believe, quadrupled, was what I read. But it proved that human beings could go into space, or pardon me, living beings could go into space.
Right. Yeah.
The ethics of this, were debated eventually. This was 1957. You can imagine that animal rights, had not quite progressed to this point. But eventually, in the late 1990s, there was somebody that had been a part of this whole process. Oleg Gazgano, one of the scientists responsible for sending Laika to space, he said, "Work with animals is a source of suffering for all of us. We treat them like babies who cannot speak. The more time passes, the more I'm sorry about it. We shouldn't have done it. We did not learn enough from this mission to justify the death of the dog." Which is probably the best way to phrase this. There was information gained. It was valuable to us as a species, to be able to know that this kind of space flight was possible and survivable under the right conditions, and yet it probably wasn't quite right. And in the heat of the space race, some mistakes were made. That is kind of the story of Laika, the little that we know about her. The one little addendum that I'll add on to this is that Russia also sent the first dogs into space that wound up actually living.
Okay.
On their way back. The two dogs, they were Bella and Strelka, that went up into space in 1960. They were accompanied by 42 mice, a gray rabbit, 2 rats, flies, and several plants and fungi. All passengers survived for these two. Sputnik 5 made 17 revolutions around Earth and spent 27 hours in orbit. And Bella and Strelka came back. They came back. They had puppies. One of those puppies was given to President John F. Kennedy as a gift, which is just a wild series. And Bella and Strelka are now...
That is so crazy.
It is absolutely nuts. And apparently, the dog that was given to JFK was, not the world's nicest dog. Eventually, he had a couple of puppies and became irritable in his older age. But Bella and Strelka, I've been taxidermized, and they're in a museum, I believe, in Russia. You can go see them now. They exist. They came back. They survived. And that is a more happy story.
I wouldn't recommend going to Russia currently.
No, I would not. But if we have any Russian listeners, go take a picture and send it in.
Yeah, sure. I will say, I do think that might be one of my favorite history facts now.
What is
That
that?
JFK got given a dog that was the puppy
Yep.
from Russian space dogs that
Yes.
were the first animals to come back from space.
To survive. That is, I did not know that until today, and it's in preparation. It was just like, I'd like to consider myself someone that knows a lot of useless crap, and this is just some of the most useless crap you could ever imagine. Presidential pets, which is there's a Wikipedia article for all of that. There's a lot of like wild pets, especially in the early years of the United States.
Oh,
but this was a very cool one. I had a chance to talk about a non-human subject for this episode. So that is all I have. And the story of Laika as well as Bella and Straka are ones that we should probably know, just along with Yuri Gagarin and Neil Armstrong and many other more famous space flights.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always is an interesting point. Not that it's usually all that relevant to this podcast topic in particular. Generally being paleontology stuff, but the ethics of using animals in research is always a little fuzzy.
Absolutely.
No pun intended for fuzzy animals. And especially now, so I work in, and actually Liz has worked taking care of some of the research animals here at my university's campus. And the main department that does research on those animals is, so it's not like quite its own department, but animal behavior is sort of a joint thing you can major in. That's sort of a joint between psychology and biology.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the psychology folks that work on that are in the same building that I work in. I see them like every day. So it's always a topic to talk about, particularly in this sense of just, shooting an animal into space when it's going to die.
Yes, and not having the ability to even bring her back. The ethics, and maybe that can be its own episode at some point, is the ethics of animal testing. But until then, this has been episode 110 of I Wish You Were Dead, a podcast about things that used to be alive. My name is Mike, and that is Gavin, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody.
This episode of I Wish You Were Dead was written by Mike Bryson and hosted by Gavin Davidson, Mike Bryson, and Fenella Campanino. It was sound edited and edited for YouTube by Gavin Davidson. Special thanks to former guests of the pod and to listeners like you.